Hey guys, so in this video I'm going to compare Teyvat's origins to Gnosticism, and I know I kind of already made a Gnosticism video, however I didn't really compare it to Genshin. I just explained how it works and I started from the point that I felt was currently relevant to Genshin. However, this time it's going to be like a side-by-side comparison. By the way, this lore is accumulative data from the Genshin wiki. The Genshin parts, obviously. Okay, so as far back as we're currently aware, this world or celestial body had already existed with beings on it, dragons and vespers, not only living on it but ruling it. 7 nations, each with raw elemental power or energy to them. These creatures were said to come from the realm of light, and so they are said to be pure elemental beings. The primordial one then comes into being from an egg. The primordial one later used that very egg to isolate this celestial body from the rest of the universe, which would be better stated as true realm or realm of light rather than universe. The primordial one then claimed to be the overall lord of the heavens. The primordial one then took on the rulers of this world with his newly created shades. He eventually won and then started to reshape the world to his liking and took control over the other nations. It states that the primordial one began creating heaven and earth for the sake of humanity and its creations. However, I know for a fact that this is a lie, because if Genshin is truly doing Gnosticism, let's just say for now that victors dictate what will be written down as history. Let's start unpacking all we've learned so far before moving on. So first, if all this was true, why would it be forbidden to read this? It's forbidden because there's mistakes in there. What am I even talking about? You see, this god that claims to be the primordial one was birthed after this world, after the dragons, after the realm of light, and all of the things in it. These facts in itself contradicts his claims, thus proving that this is complete bull. But how could a god make such a massive mistake like this, you may wonder? Well, let's compare what we have so far to Gnosticism. In Gnosticism, it is said that the true reality, the true plane, is the realm of light, in which everything is said to come from. Everything in our world first came from there as pure, light energy. And everything in our plane is just that matter recycled, that energy reused. Except for a few things like visions, which are pure primordial energy of light, obviously, which then crystallize as they enter our plane of existence. Quick note here is that in the Genshin story, the only things that are known to exist, before everything else, besides the realm of light, were these dragon things, which were made of that same pure energy. But what of the dragons, right? So in my other videos, I kind of give you my speculations, my best guess if Gnosticism is not what Genshin is doing. And those were my thoughts before I looked at Genshin through the lens of Gnosticism. However, I had constantly suspected Gnosticism to be the main point. However, when I then finally analyzed everything Genshin through the lens of Gnosticism, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that Genshin is Gnosticism. You will see it too before I'm done. It's not even heavily explaining it. It's just like showing you one for one. They match. However, this is the only part that doesn't really line up. However, it kind of does, but it needs a little explanation here, while everything else doesn't really need to be explained. You see, Gnosticism has different versions, different forms to it. The more known forms are the later ones, which are like Abrahamic, Christianity, Judaism, stuff like that. So one could then assume that Genshin is trying to imply that the dragons are things like Shaitans, the fallen ones, the Nephilim, perhaps even Jinn, right? As they existed in the beginning, right? Or at least before humanity. However, this may just be a trick, as a lot of people may assume that things like dragons and snakes are the villains, they are the evil, and that the god, the primordial one, is some divine being that must conquer these villainous creatures. when in reality he massacred them, stole their land and their power for himself. If he was truly a just God, he could have just let them be and find some other place in space and build it from scratch without bringing harm or ruins to anyone. However, since many would associate dragons and snakes and things like this with evil, I think Genshin was hoping that you wouldn't take a second look at it, kind of thing. But not in all religions are dragons seen as evil. In Chinese mythology, there are many dragon lords, and they are definitely not devils. So it's possible that Genshin is mixing mythologies here. And if you think that's not possible, then why are there yokai in the story? Why are there Celtic symbols everywhere? Why in the Egyptian pyramids why are they representing Kusanali as Thoth? However, for this origin story, they may actually not be adding anything different to the story. They just may be interpreting something from a different light, something that's not supposed to be seen as a dragon or dark or evil. They're making it seem like it's dark or evil, but we're gonna come back to that later. Enough about dragons for now. So how does the Primordial One in Gnosticism compare to Genshin's Primordial One, right? Well, it kind of explains absolutely everything. You see, the one calling himself the Primordial One isn't really, he was a mistake by a greater being. Pausing here for a second to explain that greater being, because that greater being is also in Genshin and also explains a character that not many people realize who she was, if anyone did. So the sustainer of the heavenly principles, SOHP, if you were to add an IA to that, you would have Sophia, which is the name of the greater being that created this god. We'll definitely go further into detail explaining why this is her and what this means and what she's all about later, but let's continue with the story for now because there's still a lot to tell. So back to the story. Anyway, once Sophia realized that her accident's creation was imperfect and flawed, she kind of hid him away. And him being hidden away alone led him to assuming that he is the Primordial One. But he wasn't. However, he was able to create, and some of the first things he created were other beings like himself. These first beings he created were lacking light, which may explain why in Genshin they're called shades. His creator, his mother, Sophia, realizing this, later came to him and tricked him into breathing his light into the shades. Therefore, they will then have light in them as well, and every creation they make from now on would also have light. However, despite her wisdom and her guidance, he was mostly left to his own devices. And so he ran amok creating things, but not really creating things, well, not only creating things. He was more like trapping some creatures, let's say, and recycling them. But we're gonna get into that later. Let's just continue the story for now before we start branching off in every direction. So Sophia, realizing this, she came to stop him, but she got herself trapped. The Messiah was then sent to free her, but she wasn't like in a cell. It was more like to re-enlighten her so she could gain gnosis and be able to ascend to the plane of which she came from. As she wasn't in a cell, like I said, she was more like recycled. She was made anew. So I would say, I bet you guess what I'm hinting at here, but I'm not hinting at anything. I'm just telling you the story. So what it looks like that has come to pass is that being that we know as Paimon may very well be Sophia made anew, which would explain quite a few things, like why she's dressed like the sustainer of heavenly principles, which at first I just thought was like Celestia fashion, because I thought that Paimon was from Celestia because she has celestial energy just like we do. It would also explain why she can create items and things in her little shop, as well as it explains why she was in the water. It all makes sense now. Oh wait, I haven't actually told you that part yet. I guess let me first continue comparing Teyvat's origin story with Gnosticism, and then we'll eventually get to that point, and that part is coming up soon anyways. So in Genshin, 400 years after the Primordial One enters the scene, he finally finishes preparing the world for humans. Him and his shade create all of the animals and humans, I guess, as well. And then a pact with the humans is made. Likely something like, follow me, do everything I tell you to do, believe everything I say, or else, honestly, right? It also says that he made a plan for them, which I assume is just the tree that keeps recycling their data and their energy and their lives constantly. That might seem benevolent, however, outside of this egg, this dome that he rules over, you know, in the realm of light, we can't even die there. There is no need to be reborn in the first place. Also, since this system has been created with the trees and the ley lines, I think this implies that the dragon's energies themselves from earlier in the story might have been recycled and reborn themselves, creating the archons as we know them. And so if an archon does manage to die, another will take its place just by how the energy naturally flows. Next in the story would be about Seelies and the Moon Sisters and stuff like that. However, that's gonna get us way sidetracked and onto a completely different category. So let's just skip that for now. Onto the throne of the heaven, because the second who came, the first descender, real fast, the descenders aren't a mystery. All four of them are known to us. It's just they try to like confuse you, but we know who all four of them are. We are the fourth descender. The first descender, Nahida believes is the sustainer of heavenly principles. And who am I to try to second guess the god of wisdom, right? The third descender is your sibling, which I'll explain in a bit, which means that the second descender is Alice. Therefore, all four of them are known. Therefore, when the story in Genshin says the second who came, obviously after the demiurge, and the demiurge is what you call the god who thinks that they're the primordial one but isn't. Anyway, the second who came, which is the first descender, is the sustainer of heavenly principles, Sophia. This matches Gnosticism perfectly. But before I explain that, in Genshin, when the second who comes, you know, the first descender, comes down, a war breaks out between the primordial one, obviously the demiurge, not the actual primordial one, and the second who came, which resulted in the destruction of the heaven and the earth. So what happened here? How does it compare to Gnosticism? Well, I kind of already told you earlier, but I got ahead of myself, so let me explain it here. Earlier I said the demiurge ran amok creating everything. Well, not really, like some things were being trapped and recycled, and then Sophia came down to stop him. Not only because she felt responsible, but because it's wrong. But she ended up getting trapped herself in Gnosticism. But let's pause here a second, because in Genshin, at the start of the game, it kind of mixed it up. And I'm not implying that it's wrong, it's more like Genshin added some extra steps. So what are those steps? Well, it seems that in Genshin, Sophia, when she came down, she actually whipped the demiurge's tail, possibly being the one to seal him in the land of darkness, which in Genshin, maybe Khaenri'ah, maybe the Abyss, or maybe Khaenri'ah is in the Abyss. Another quick note is there are 5 Abyss Lords or Archons who rule down there. This will come to be known if Genshin really is doing Gnosticism. Anyway, when I got ahead of myself earlier, I kind of said that so when Sophia got herself trapped, the Messiah came to save her. That's us, the twin star from Gnosticism. I'm gonna have to get sidetracked here a little bit, but this is an important sidetrack, so let me explain. So, in the battle pass, in Genshin, it tells us a tale. The same tale from Gnosticism. The Hem of the Pearl. It's about an heir who dwelled in their father's kingdom. They longed for nothing because they had everything. But one day they were tasked to find and bring back a pearl from the land of darkness, in which they will find a sea. And at the bottom of that sea they will find a pearl. But that pearl will be guarded by a huge dragon-like snake. If the heir can face and conquer all of the fears and challenges that lie before them, they will be given their father's throne. So the heir goes, but quickly gets distracted by the place, by its people. They enjoy the splendors of the land, and they feast and they drink and they sleep, but they sleep too close to the serpent, and so they forget. The king, watching from above, sends a letter, which turns into a bird. an eagle if I'm not mistaken, to remind the heir who they are, where they came from, and what their task is. Not right away, but eventually the heir notices the letter, reminding them of all things. And so they then continue on their original task to retrieve the pearl, which pretty much matches Genshin's story. This making the player, the bird, the message sent to our sibling to awaken them, which I kind of had already explained in my Tree of Life video, explaining that that's how you would, get your sibling back. But anyway, how can we be a letter, a message, or a bird, one might wonder? Well, all of that story isn't exactly as it seems. That place that the story started in is the realm of light. In Genshin, you can see that Celestia is coming through some portal, and light is shining through the doorway into this reality. The king would be the true primordial one, the real god. The heir is obviously the Messiah, and us, the player. And though not revealed to another tale later, they are also the twin star, the twin angels. The task of getting the pearl is to experience this world, to overcome its temptations, delusions, deceptions, lies, and its chains, to earn gnosis, to gain divine spiritual enlightenment, and ascend ourselves to godship. Genshin, however, mixed this story from when the Messiah went down to save Sophia with the story of the pearl, so making Sophia now the pearl. This works out better from my point of view, because since we come from the realm of light, we need nothing, because we can create absolutely everything we could ever possibly want from light, and the light is endless. So why would we need to go down into the egg to get anything that's in there? We could create anything. However, if it's something like a soul, making this a much greater story, and it has much more importance than just obtaining this item to complete this task, as it's now more important because it's a person's soul. This would be something worth obtaining. They can't be replaced so easily. Even more so because it's Sophia. Anyway, so in Genshin, when the traveler goes down to save Sophia, it looked like she turned on us, which is impossible if she was under the control of her own thoughts. So what I think happened here is Genshin added some extra steps, which makes it more interesting anyway. So what happened was, when Sophia came down and gave the demiurge a whipping, she must have gotten infected and hypnotized into believing that we are the enemy. I think she might have started to reawaken when she realized what we're made of, but not completely, at least not before, hitting us with that primordial wrath. I don't know exactly how this happened next, but somehow she ended up getting recycled into a younger form of herself, which, like I said earlier, explains why she's dressed like she's from Celestia, which is the heavens, and dressed similarly to Sophia, the sustainer of heavenly principles. It would also explain why she has celestial energy like we do, that floaty stuff all around, the little stars, and why she can create things in her little shop, and why she was in the water, because she's the pearl, and why she's now has white and is wearing white because she's the pearl. Backtracking a bit, this is kind of like how our sibling, the first one to come down and Conry and everything, they got too close to the snake by the story, and they got themselves, hypnotized into assuming that they are the one right, they're the one with all the answers, and we're the one who doesn't understand. We are the ones sent with the message to reawaken our sibling, as well as the Messiah, the twin angels, the twin stars, sent to save Sophia. It all adds up too well to be a coincidence from my point of view. There's a few things that I couldn't fit anywhere into the story, but these things will likely come to pass if Genshin is truly doing Gnosticism. Therefore, they're kind of worth mentioning. First is the sacred knowledge, the forbidden fruits, is not just the origin story, but it's knowing that even a lowly human can become just as powerful as the demiurge. Next is that after Sophia is rescued, she divides herself into two beings, one returning to the heavens and the other remaining on the earth to help the humans and the world, where she guides people as an unseen force, leaving clues and patterns in the structures of everything in creation. Till the time where the people all break their shackles, it says, at the height of the material world and the peaks of the mind, the people will gaze upon the hills of Sophia's kingdom of light, the bride's chamber. Till then, one by one, Sophia draws her spiritual children, bidding them to join her elect army. This is her gift, brought forth by the endless light, made by her compassion and wisdom. It seems to me that this would kind of like translate into Genshin, as she is the one giving out the visions. However, this might be a mistake on Genshin's part, because she hasn't made it to this part of the story yet where she divides herself and is putting the clues in the structures, even though there are clues in the structure currently, and that she's giving out visions. Unless somehow Genshin is implying that she's doing it subconsciously. Or perhaps time is very wonky in Genshin. Another thing to note about Genshin that I couldn't fit anywhere is that our sibling and us may become one being, which was from a story I didn't get to explain, but I can't cover everything, and there's a lot in Gnosticism. Also, if all of this is panning out, what does this say about the Fatui? It actually says a lot. So the Fatui would be worshippers of the demiurge. They likely would want to free him. They likely think they're superior to everyone else because they follow his ways and his teachings, which they think are the true way, when in reality they are seen as foolish in the mythology. They should have no awareness of the realm of light, and following his ideas and passions enslaves them, which would explain why they aren't able to obtain visions. If you saw my Tree of Life video, I'm not gonna explain all that here. Also in Gnosticism, there's 7 gods of the earth, 7 kings of the earth, and 5 of the abyss, 7 archons of the land, and 5 archons of the abyss. Another thing to note is that I'm kind of shocked that no one has ever assumed that Paimon is the demiurge. Out of all of her theories out there, I guess not many people know Gnosticism enough to come to this conclusion, but one could come to this, assumption. However, it's wrong, but let me just make those comparisons so someone else doesn't have to. The demiurge is said to be a child god. They're greedy, they're foolish, they're young. It would also explain where the heck the demiurge has been all this time. Some might even claim that this is like the demiurge wanting to perceive things as, a human, like being reborn and experiencing the world from scratch without all of the things that they know. However, that's not the case. I don't have time to go into everything, but trust me on this one. Paimon acts the way she acts because she was reset. She doesn't have all of that enlightened knowledge and wisdom she used to have. She's a baby. So she has to go through all of these temptations that this world has, all of this delusions and lies, all the greed and gluttony. She has to experience this stuff and overcome this stuff. She's still young. She's still relearning everything. But you can see in the choices she makes, the things she feels, the things she ends up choosing, she has a good heart deep down. She's not the demiurge. However, now that I've shined some light on what Genshin takes their inspiration from, and therefore what is likely things to come, they might now mix it up now that I perhaps have spoiled their story. Anyway, that's about it for now, guys. I normally don't say this because I really don't care, but I'm only a handful of subscriptions away from hitting 1,000, and then I start making chump change from YouTube, which I would probably spend on my other dog. But anyway, if you guys could subscribe or stay subscribed until I gain a few more subscribers, that would be great. I appreciate you guys, each and every one of you guys. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I hope to see you next time.